Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are at pedalshift.net/133, and you can email me at the show, pedalshift@pedalshift.net, or call the voicemail hotline 202-930-1109, and check out Pedalshift on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody. This is Tim Mooney back again for another edition of the Pedalshift Project, number 133. And this will be Chapter 3 of Pedalshift Tour Journals, Volume 11, Oregon Coast Loop. This is the final sort of substantive tour journal-y part of the show. This will cover from Port Orford, Oregon to the California border and then back to Portland, Oregon. Well, sort of. I kind of ends in Pacific City, but you'll just have to assume that I got on the bus and made it because, hi, I'm here. Spoiler alert. So the trip was kind of like climbing a mountain. You get to your goal, or you're going for your goal, and then you have to turn around and go back. So the California border was within reach. But will this nutty transit-aided return work? Well, spoiler alert, I'm here. I got back. So it did. But it did in a weird way. Let's go check it out. Good morning, and I do not remember what day of the trip this is. Let's see, I think I've camped in 3 places, so we'll call it day 4. And I am now rolling out, as you can probably hear from the wind, of the Humbug Mountain hiker-biker campsite. It was a fun night. It was a quick, quiet night after I recorded the end of day 3 segment for this tour journal. It was pretty much to bed, which was unusual, and because I think that this crew, at least the folks that I'd come in contact before, tended to stay up a little bit later and sleep in a little bit more. But I think in part because of the nature of the site, once it gets dark, boy, it gets dark. So everybody was to sleep pretty early. And for me, that was great. I was pretty much ready to go to sleep, and I ended up sleeping the sleep of champions, which was so nice to have after, honestly, relatively rocky nights of sleep. Of course, the night before had the, there was a lot of activity in camp, even in the hiker-biker campsite. There was a lot of activity with the screaming and yelling and whatnot. We have a confirmation as to what happened. Apparently, a gentleman wandered into the ladies' bathroom, and I'll say hilarity ensued, although it wasn't hilarious for the young girls that were in there. They freaked out. It sounds like it was a giant episode of Three's Company. There's a reference for all you millennials who probably don't know what I'm talking about. Big misunderstanding. And as a result, that's why things got crazy. And, because it was a gentleman walking in, there was a question as to what his motives were, et cetera, et cetera. Boy, it sure as heck seems like it was just a giant mistake. It's dark, and it's real easy to screw up those signs at 10:45 in the evening, especially if you hadn't used that bathroom before. In any event, that was the craziness of that night. I am now going along what's best described as I would call this a generous shoulder. I think a lot of people would say this is no good because it's up against a sheer rock face, and it's gorgeous. It's one of the best elements of this entire park, I think, or the state park. Just the proximity to these huge cliffs that just keep going and going and going and going. I think I mentioned that I lost my mirror yesterday, which is a bummer. This is something that I really prefer having, and I'm used to riding with, especially on the Pacific Coast. I've looked down several times to look and see what's behind me and haven't seen anything. In the end, its utility is
replaceable by looking over my shoulder or coming to a stop or slowing down and looking over. So that'll be fine. I find that it's a great comfort to have, particularly on long descents, and I've got a few today, when there's curves, so that you can comfortably know that you can take the lane for an extended period of time if you want. That's nice. And I'm not going to have that today. So be it. The clothing situation. Once again, I find myself hoarding a clean version of what I ride in. I've worn the same shirt and pants every day for my ride and have cleaned neither. And they're both synthetic, and I would expect them to stink. But I'm surprised to say that they do not at this point. I have no explanation for it, and many of you listening may be like, Tim, it probably stinks. So, what does stink is my hat. My hat smells like the worst thing you've ever smelled. It smells like death. I'm thinking that perhaps I'm going to need to be rinsing that more frequently. It's a good brand called, what is it? Sweatheads or something like that. It's made for athletic endeavors such as this. So it's helpful as sort of a headband at the same time, but it's very, very light and airy up top, so it does enough to block the sun from the top of your head and still have a lot of breathability. Now, of course, I'm wearing my helmet while I'm on the road, so I think I've got pretty good UV protection up there, in addition to other types of protection. So today, the ride here to Gold Beach is about, I want to say it's like 20, might even be up to 25 miles. I think it's closer to 20, which is good. I've had one bar, which is definitely not going to be enough. They're just these like kind of pumpkin seed chewy granola bar things by Kashi or Kind or something like that. I find them to be so sweet that I can't pre-eat them very quickly or well. So I think I'm going to just eat some more as I go along here. Beautiful little waterfall we just passed. And I also have one of those Hostess style apple pies. You know, those things are calorie bombs, and I always like them. It's one of the few, and then they're stupid sweet. I don't understand why I have problems with this wonderful multi-grain seed thing, and not the Hostess style apple pie. I was talking to one of the guys in camp, and we were talking about, and I got a great idea for a show based on this discussion. If you're on a budget trying to find the best bang for the buck for calories while you're riding, and I would venture to say that the apple pie, or maybe any of those kind of prepackaged fruit pies, have got to be on that list. I think I'm definitely going to be doing an entire show on that. Maybe in the winter. It feels like a good winter episode when I'm not struggling for content, but when content is much more about thinking about bike touring rather than doing bike touring. So look for that in the feed at some other point. All right, enough yammering. Let's get cycling. Gold Beach, Oregon. One of the last couple of towns of note in the state of Oregon going southbound. And I am finally getting the kind of tailwind that we so often get. It is strong, it is robust, and it is coming from the north and pushing south. So just in time even for one of the bigger climbs of note. Well, certainly the biggest climb of today. I don't think it's the biggest climb of my trip, but one that's always standing in the way. I'm reminded of the first time I did it. I think the first time I had to do it on a rear wheel that had blown a couple of spokes on the Goblin when I first got it. And that was a little dicey because there's no bike shop in town, or if there is, it wasn't open at that time. Sunday traffic is starting to pick up, and I always like stopping here because you have a really nice. There's a little bit of climbing, but there's a lot of flats and it's beautiful views coming into town. And then I love the Gold Beach bookstore. They've got a little cafe attached to it. They always have good stuff. They did not, however, have my sticky bun, which has been tradition for every single time I stop there. None, zero, nada. I don't know if it's because it's Sunday or what, but none. So, as a result, I had to go with a breakfast burrito, which frankly was probably better for me. I feel a lot more centered having some food in me that is not sugar forward. So that feels good. And as I leave town, I am leaving following the bookstore playing 13 Tales from Urban Boheimia, one of the great Dandy Warhols albums. Most people's favorite. No disrespect to 13 Tales, but and this is controversial, this is hot takes time. I'm kind of a Welcome to the Monkey House guy. I don't know why. Well, I mean, I don't know. Tomato, tomato, man. You're making me pick kids here.
Okay, this is me in the here and now. This happened after all the tour and all the extra stuff that you're going to be hearing for the rest of the show. So I'm leaving Gold Beach and I'm cycling up this hill. I get to this really picturesque spot. I take a picture of my bike and I say on Twitter, Bookstore in Gold Beach is playing Sleep By at the Dandy Warhols, which is the soundtrack to any proper bicycle tour of the Oregon coast. I CC Brock from the Spark Up podcast because I know he's a fan of the Dandies as well. I just thought it was kind of fun and cool and whatever. Didn't expect anything to happen. And nothing did for a couple of days. And then I got retweeted, which was really, really, really kind of fun. So Dandy Warhols totally retweeted Pedalshift. You can go check it out. It's out there. Go look. Back to the show.
Leaving town on the way to Brookings, and I'll kind of assess from there. Based on the time that I'm seeing, it's just before 11 a.m. You know, I should be at the campsite by 2, and I would think that they would be taking people coming in by that point. So I think that I'm going to stick to plan and unload, go into town, go to the border, maybe have dinner in town, bring back celebratory beers, and go from there. Should be a fun day. It's going to be a long day. It's really sunny again. So, you know, when all is said and done, I'm going to be doing, I think, 64, 65-ish miles, which is the most that I'll have done for the entire trip. Only by a few miles, nothing really spectacular, which is another reason why I think going unloaded will be good. Now, that northbound bunch of miles that I'll be doing, if this wind is continuing, it's going to be a slog, but unloaded will be a lot better than loaded. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see. I suspect my energy levels will be much better if I get this nice push all the way down to Brookings. So that is it. What a gorgeous day, gorgeous views. I hope you're checking out the videos and all the pictures as well. Brookings, Oregon. I am lightened up, checked into camp, and rolling to grab some lunch. It's great. It's only a little after 2, I think. 2:30, I should say, which is just perfect, you know. Grabbing something light for lunch, and maybe a little caffeine, perhaps. I could use a jolt of that. But then hitting the border, doing the ceremonial selfie, and then turning around and coming back, picking up a few things for dinner. I think that sounds like a great way to spend the afternoon, maybe a couple of hours. It's about 6.5 miles or so to the border from where I'm at right now. So it's not a really long ride. It's just enough extra mileage to be kind of silly, but and I considered briefly not doing it, or doing it in the morning. But then I realized there is no way that I'm going to get up early enough in the morning to risk doing a border run to get back for the bus. I'm going to have enough time to get to this bus. So I think that it's a much better idea just to get on down, do it today. It's a little, the fog is starting to come in a little bit. So I think that that'll help me a little bit more. Man, you know, this is a day that on paper looks to be pretty chill. But boy, it's a real, just getting to Brookings, it's a lot of climbing, a devious amount of climbing, and a lot of sun exposure if the sun is out. So I think that ends up just taking a lot out of me. It's really interesting that normally about now I wouldn't have gone to the campsite. I wouldn't have packed up. I would have gone straight to the Fred Meyer here, taken an extended break. Maybe not the Fred Meyer. Maybe I would have gone to one of the restaurants here or the fast food places. And, you know, I still have, 30 miles to go. You know, that's my typical day. It's really interesting how much of a death march I put myself through on most days. But from here, it's very, very chill. It's much flatter. And in fact, it's even a little bit downhill. Well, in any event, I'm going to go enjoy what Brookings has to offer, and then off to the border. From the California border, this is the end of the first half of this trip. I'm moving out of the way because lots of people stop to take pictures here at the border. They do it in cars, they hop out and they leave. So I'm going to walk further back into Oregon. The state line cannabis, of course, is there, which is just hysterical. The amount of weed, if you are an aficionado of weed and you want to bike the Oregon coast, you can do both of them together at the same time because, lordy, there's a lot of weed places. I'm still within eye shot here of the California sign. I thought it was flat and easy and whatnot to get down here. Turns out it's mostly downhill coming to here. And I got a headwind at the same time. So I'll be going uphill, but I hopefully will get the benefit of a tailwind, one of those odd northbound tailwinds that I'm hoping I'll get some more of and the biking portions of the remaining part of my northbound trip. But this marks the end of my southbound journey. It was fun and awesome, and I do have to say, Crescent City only being 20 miles away, just, you know, all the people I'm talking to are going to San Francisco, to LA. They're trust me, it's tough to turn around here, but this is what I wanted to do. And now the second part, the heavily transit-aided return back to Portland is going to be starting tomorrow morning. So one of my first things is, in addition to getting a couple of things for dinner tonight, is to scope out where the bus stop is. I saw, interestingly enough, there's one that's in a town. It's funny. It's a town that I always thought was Brookings, but it's another one. Have to look at it on a map or find a reference to it. But there was a second bus stop that's actually closer to the border. So conceivably, I could have done this in the morning and then grabbed the bus from there. But you know what? This is all good. I'm happy to do it. I had the energy today. I may be kicking myself doing the uphills back to Brookings. But, you know, I'm still on a little bit of a high finishing this all off. So this is great, and this is a lot of fun. And for once, normally when I'm doing this, I'm feeling a little bittersweet about leaving Oregon. So while the pull of the Golden State is strong, I get to go back to Oregon and stay in Oregon. Because normally it says, Oregon, thanks, you come back soon. There's a sign here on the Oregon side. But I get to turn around and go back. So I get to go back past the Welcome Center as if I left, which I guess I did for a moment. All right, I'm rambling. Hey, if you're doing this, you may see some more Pedalshift stickers out there. Just saying. I don't know how they got there. That's not true. Back in camp. Got a shower in. New trick, by the way, for keeping beers cold. If you don't want to buy a whole thing of ice, get frozen veggies. Seems to work. Frozen pretzels work too, but frozen veggies work just as good, and then they can go in a salad. So you're sort of making it work. Now, of course, I got to figure out where my campsite is. This way. Fog might be coming in. I think I'm on team that wasn't smoke earlier. I'm not smelling it. I'm not seeing it. It just seems pretty clear that this is a smoke-free area, which is good. That doesn't mean that the campfires aren't still legit down south of here, but it is not having impacts this far north in Oregon, and therefore probably won't impact my trip, which is good, because last fall, as you recall, they certainly impacted things. Gonna enjoy some dinner, enjoy some beers, maybe enjoy the company of a few folks tonight, and early morning tomorrow. So this is my southernmost point to lay my head on this trip, and it's been a good one.
So, hey, this is me, Andy, here and now again. I, for whatever reason, didn't record kind of the craziness that happened in the morning, and I had to get up super early. Maybe back up a second. I ended up having a few beers with the folks who were in camp and talked about their continuing adventures going south, and was feeling a little bummed out about that, as I talked about earlier here. Everything was fine, though. I mean, I was ready to turn around. This was the trip. I was biking the route that I intended to bike. So I woke up to an alarm, stupid early, with the sun still down, and got all packed up. And it was interesting because there were a couple of other people who were hikers who were leaving around the same time, who gruffly just sort of trudged off as they went off on their own. And then I got all packed up and recorded some video, and then ended up going to the Fred Meyer, hoping that I would be able to get some breakfast or at least a cup of coffee. No, sir. It was closed. It was not going to be open until a few minutes before my bus left. So I ended up at the fine establishment known as McDonald's, got a cup of coffee there, got a nice coffee and maybe a hash brown or something like that, and then hopped on the bus. And it worked fine. It just was a little off-putting when sort of you're uncaffeinated, decaffeinated, anti-caffeinated, and you don't want to do what you want to do. Anyways, so I wait there for the bus, and it was the beginning of this incredible northbound bus adventure, because remember, I'm in Brookings, Oregon. I'm about as far south as you can get in the state of Oregon, and I needed to get north as much as I could via buses and bike. And of course, there was that little gap there, as I've talked about as well. So here's how it all went.
From Gold Beach, Oregon. Wait, what? Yes, I'm back in Gold Beach. Just like that. I am one stop in on the Coastal Express, which stops in all the major towns, cities, etc., between Brookings and North Bend. And so I am North Bend bound. Got the bike on the bus, no problem. It's real casual. I mean, everything's real casual on this ride. It's a beautiful day. And by beautiful, I mean foggy and socked in and cloudy. And I wish I was riding in this. It does sound like this is all going to burn off by the time I get up to North Bend, which is a little unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. I love riding in this weather. I wish I could get more of it. The last 2 days have been so much harder because of all the sun exposure, but you know, you take what you get. And it's been such a great ride. And I'm excited that I've got 2 more days of riding left in me, even though they're shorter days. They may be a little more challenging because if they're just as sunny, I'm also going to be getting headwinds most likely too. Hey, so be it. One thing I realized is that my week pass that I got is, well, that's kind of for naught, because I extended the day. That gets me to day 8, and I'm going to have to pay for the return trips all up the coast. So I bought this $30 pass that only ended up getting used in one direction, and that's fine by me. I think I'm happy to support these bus systems with a little extra cash, and it's a great deal too when you consider I'm going point to point with my bike for a very reasonable fee. The bus, incidentally, for the Coastal Express here in Curry County, it was $25 to get me and my bike.
up a really substantial amount of coastline. It is at least 2 days of riding. Well, no, it is 2 full days of riding that's going to be erased in 3 hours. Amazing, right? More to come. Back in North Bend, Oregon. Just like that, 2 full days of riding taken care of in 3 hours. I'm sitting here undoing all the bungees and getting the bike all re-put together. Right around the corner from kind of a classic stop for me, this grocery store, the Safeway here in North Bend. It's interesting. I've got some choices that I could make with where I'm going to stay tonight. And so, but the sun is starting to peek out. I can split this up. I've got it's 11 a.m. right now. Tomorrow, I can't check in until later in the afternoon. So I think I'm going to do kind of like a 1/3, 2/3 kind of thing with this ride. I'll do about 20 miles today and stay up near Winchester Bay at Umpqua Lighthouse State Park. At least that's the plan for the moment. And do the rest of the miles, about 50-ish miles to Yachats the next day. And that'll be it. Tonight will be my last night camping. I've got an Airbnb set up for the next night. So I think I'll very casually get going out of here today. There's no rush. There's no need to go super far, super fast. And I'm totally okay with that. Maybe grab a few snacks. I'm fairly full from a breakfast that I had back in Brookings. And no need to rush here. It's nice that it's cool. I like that. Good morning from the final cycling day. Well, I guess there's some cycling tomorrow. This was my final camping night. Didn't record a hey, here's how my day went kind of thing. For reasons I'm unclear on. It's funny. I'm usually pretty good at it. I think I was feeling more introspective, and I didn't talk to anybody really in camp to speak of. A little bit. I mean, I wasn't like rude or anything, but it was interesting feeling different because of the northboundness. There was one other guy in camp who is a northbounder as well, and I talked to him mostly, which it's just interesting. Normally I sort of will talk to everybody at least a little bit, but for whatever reason, I have to wonder if it was everybody else is southbound and I'm going northbound. Just something interesting to note. Had great sleep. The day. I should talk a little bit about yesterday since I didn't last night. The winds were noticeable. They weren't impossible. There were moments that they were really, really in your face, 10, 15 miles per hour. I cut through them pretty well with this setup. I'm really glad I did not have the side panniers. I think that the situation where you set up in your head where you're going to go, it kind of ends up setting up the limits of your strength for the day sometimes. Yesterday was interesting because I was like, okay, I'm only going to go 20 miles. And I was like, it was so early and I was so fresh and I was like, screw this. So I went through and then I was like, wow, I'm feeling really strong when I was about maybe 15 miles away from Honeyman. And I was like, I've stayed at Honeyman. Maybe I can go elsewhere. So as a result, I ended up, pushing through, and then about 10 miles out, I really started to get tired. And it wasn't a, lack of hydration or food like it so often can be. I think my mind was like, yeah, no, this is it. It was a good day. You did good. Makes today much shorter and much easier to get to Yachats. But then I was also thinking, wait, maybe I do 50 to Newport and stay in Newport instead and forget the Airbnb. But I don't think I'm going to do that. It's an option. I think what I'd rather do is have a really kick-ass breakfast here in town and then go from there. I'm making the less than ideal
crossing of 101 right now. Something I am not used to. The campgrounds are typically on the right-hand side as you go southbound, with a few exceptions. Humbug is one, but this one was definitely not on the right side of the road for me. So that was pretty easy, though. It is only 8:30 on a Tuesday, so it wasn't too bad. Yeah, I don't know if I have much to say about the route. I think the climbing was I did the route just in reverse, so all of my downhills were uphills. So it's hard to kind of say, was it harder, was it easier, whatever. It definitely wasn't easier. And I think the prevailing winds were a part of it. I would definitely comment on the size of the shoulder. I've noticed a lot of the books and commentary will say northbound you get a terrible shoulder. It's all on the southbound side. And that is certainly true in some parts. There were parts of the northbound shoulder where I looked over, the southbound had at least 3 feet, reasonable, not great. And then the northbound one was broken up asphalt that left maybe a few inches, like 6 inches of shoulder. So I was riding the white line, which is definitely not something I like to do. Now, the times when that tended to happen was when I was going uphill, so there was a climbing lane for the vehicles. So as a result, it worked fine. The vehicles all sort of went around me. I think there was maybe one time when a vehicle was being passed in the left climbing lane, and so there were 2 cars that passed me at once, but it still ended up working out okay in terms of the amount of space that was available. So I would say this small sample size so far, I just don't think that the northbound is substantially less safe. I think that there are just as bad shoulders going southbound in other parts of this ride. So I just don't think it's that much worse. People do it, just a lot fewer people. So yeah, if going northbound is a piece of what you want to do on the specific coast route, I say do it. I mean, people do it all the time. It's going to be harder work. You may want to kind of consider lessening your miles unless you're really strong with headwinds. I don't know. It isn't as daunting as I expected it to be, but I do think that you have to plan for it a little bit. So as I sort of coast down into Florence here, again, weird because normally it's a little bit of a climb into camp. Not a big one, but you're pedaling into it, and here I am just gliding away. The options are somewhat endless. I'm kind of hoping for a pig and pancake. I'm gonna be straight up honest. That's tradition. Missed out in Lincoln City. Which is the true tradition is Lincoln City's pig and pancake. So I will investigate to see if there's one here in Florence, and if there is, fantastic. I don't think I can check in till 3 p.m. and I am a 3-hour ride away. So I'm expecting to see some of the sights along the way. And then what's funny is I'm so discombobulated with this whole northbound thing that I can't remember what's right before Florence, what's between Florence and Yachats. I know Yachats is really pretty, but considering I'm going to be there for most of the afternoon, I think I want to wait until after I check in to kind of explore that, because I'll be there for at least a fair amount of the day. So I think I'm going to be focusing more on the ride up. So that is it from Florence-ish. Hoping for a nice cool day, but it's nice and foggy today like it was yesterday, except the sun did come out yesterday. Eventually it did burn off. I'm really enjoying, that's another reason to kind of skew things early, but then again, end up in Yachats stupid early. We'll see. I'm sure I'll mention it to you in a later chapter. Just had a little bit of a scare, we'll call it. I was just got over the bridge over the Susla River that takes you into Florence, and then a dog comes running across 101, like not a scary dog, a very friendly waggy tail dog, but running across 101, has tons of collars and stuff. I'm on the bike, so I'm trying to think, okay, let me get off the bike and try and grab this dog. And it runs away, and I'm intending to go up to it again because he was just peeing or something. And then there was somebody from the real estate office here came out, and I was like, is that your dog? And he's like, no, but he does grab the dog and brings him inside. So I'm thinking there's going to be some good resolution to this story. Wow. I see stuff like that, and it's just so scary. It's just so scary. You turn your back for a minute, and dogs have a mind of their own sometimes, and this is a busy major highway. Luckily there was a gap. I don't know if the dog saw me, and because he came up and jumped up and was in a friendly way, put his paws on me and stuff after I stopped. So I don't know if he was following me across the road, but yikes. But we're looking at a good resolution, I think. Phew. Northbound 101 continues. So I'm thinking about how much I miss not having stayed in Pacific City in a while. So, kind of toying with eating the Airbnb and taking the bus up to Newport, and then to Lincoln City, and then to Pacific City. And then I'd be that much closer. I could actually get to Portland earlier tomorrow. I don't know if that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to see. And part of the reason is that today's the last day my bus pass works too. I'm going to have to pay cash for any northbound travel after today, or eastbound actually. So I don't know. There's also Newport, and that's a really quick bus ride up. So I'm kind of feeling it. I could do Newport and get up stupid early and still make that same early bus back to Portland. But kind of thinking Pacific City if the buses and the stars all align. The nice thing is that if for some reason they don't, there's a campground, obviously, in Newport. There's two. There's one in Lincoln City, which I would really prefer not to stay at, but it's there. And then, of course, there's Pacific City. So, let's see what happens. All right, I feel like I did a good deed. First of all, I met some nice people from Kansas City. And I'm not going to identify them because I'm realizing I should ask for permission before I say anything on podcast. Ditto with another biker the northbound guy. And I was all bummed out that I was like, I'm going to be eating this Airbnb, blah, blah, blah. Well, he was going to stay in Newport anyways. That's only 20 miles up. So I said, hey, dude, why don't you stay there? So he is. So that's pretty great. Packing up for the bus. Newport City Hall. I have had a wonderful afternoon at the Rogue Brewers on the Bay. Had a fun conversation with a woman who works for the Forest Service, and followed by that by a retired union iron worker. I tell you, the people you meet, it is fantastic. Great conversations all around. I am now waiting on the bus. This is a connection bus here in Newport that will take me to Lincoln City. This is Lincoln County's transit. Lincoln County! Great drivers. I have had a wonderful experience. The connection is sort of so-so. The handoff between Lincoln County and further on up. So we'll see how this goes. But assuming that I make this at the Chinook Winds Casino in Lincoln City, a place I would really like not to stay in, a place I would like this connection to make. God love you, Lincoln City. There is a state park there, but I would Devil's Lake, I think. But I would really like to not stay a night in Lincoln City. That will get me up to Pacific City, and it's my place, man. It's my jam. So, hoping this all works out. There's a bit of a layover, enough of a layover that the connection I'm hopefully will be made, and then Pac City, Pelican Brewing might end up there. Hoping there's a camping spot at Webb County Park. We'll see how it goes. From the next morning, in Pacific City, Oregon. This is it. It was quite the sprint to get up the coast, with that little bit of a layover in Newport, and that worked out really, really well. I'm going to argue I had one too many beers, because by the time I got up to this fine town, the Pelican did not seem very appealing to me at that point. I was kind of like beered out. I know, crazy, right? I'm looking out, and hopefully you'll be able to see the video, at this bank of white nothingness where the ocean normally is, and the fog is just thick as all get out, and it's just the perfect kind of coastal morning, the kind of day that I love. I can't see the ocean. I can't see the reason why I'm sort of here in some ways, but I don't know, maybe the fog is a reason why I'm here too. I had a rough night sleeping. There was a poor kid was crying until like 1 a.m, and not just like occasional crying, a constant crying, that kind of like the kid was sick kind of crying, or terrified, one of the two. That was on the other end of camp, so that wasn't too horrible, but earplugs helped. But yeah, I didn't end up taking a shower, and I regretted that. I was just sticky, and it's just strange what you end up doing and deciding to do and not do. This morning it came early on me. I decided, I kept waking up all through the night because I was anxious to make this bus. There's another bus. There are multiple buses. It's just that if I make this one, I can make that first bus to Portland. So I got coffee. The Stimulus Bakery has been completely redone since I've been here. I mean, it's got an open bakery now, and it's really cool. It's just as good as it was. It's just different. And I feel like that's the case with the coast for me, is that it's always very familiar, but always a little bit different. Things are always changing and evolving. But my relationship with the coast is always kind of the same. And it's mornings like this that underscores that. So, needless to say, I'll be back.
Statistics for days 4 through 6. Bus miles traveled, 110 plus 71 plus 98 is 5. Carry the 1, 279. Bike miles biked, 73. Sticky buns, 0. Still pissed at that. Dandy Warhols albums played in bookstores, 1. Number of tales in Urban Boheimia, 13. Number of audibles called to change plans, 2. Retired iron workers, 1. Crying kids in camp, 1. Hey, that's it for this particular edition, but remember, I've got one more wrap-up coming up soon, so one more episode left in the Tour Journals Oregon Loop. And we like to end off the show, as always, with a big thank you to the supporters of the show, who are members of the Pedalshift Society. If you like what you hear, you can help maintain Pedalshift as an independent, listener-supported voice while expanding the offerings. We're talking $1, $2, $5 a month. Helps with the cost of hosting the podcast and the website. You can do it for a bit and cancel anytime. One-shot support is welcome as well. If you're not into the small monthly thing, check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Ethan Georgie, Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lane, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Josiah Matthews, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittis, Thomas Skadow, Seth Krieger, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Noah Schroer, Harry Telgadas, John Sikorsky, Richard Killian, Chris Barron, Brian Wren, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Paul Mulvey, Stuart Buchan, Todd Stutz, Mr. T, Roxy Arning, Nathan Poulton, Harry Hugel, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Ruth Divorcey, Michelle Miller, Matthew Lewis, Michael Baker, Billy Crafton, Paul Culbertson, Scott Culbertson, Matt Perry, Danielle Jepson, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Bobby Ruppel, Roy Everett, Greg Braithwaite, John Mayer, William Cairns, Sandy Pizzio, Richard Patch, Mark Messer, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Dave Roll, Joseph Quinn, John Baxter, and Susan Brewster. And thanks also to all past contributors and anonymous contributors for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.